And we should also say that there's a whole world that was built around Overwatch. And one of the ideas was, so Warcraft is a very particular kind of world. StarCraft is a particular kind of world. Diablo is a particular kind of world. And you wanted to bring Overwatch to Earth and make it positive. You give this talk where there was a lot of respect paid to the sort of dark, gritty, post-apocalyptic games on Earth. Also give a lot of respect to the ultra-realistic first-person shooter games like Call of Duty. And you wanted to create something more that paints a vision of a near-term, hopeful future and fun and more sort of surreal versus like ultra real. So it's interesting to talk through how a world comes to life, how you think about that world, how you create the tone of the game, how you think, how you craft in this vision, not just like different characters like Tracer and so on, like what the personalities, but like bringing the world to life in which they will be. What was that process like?
The process was a blast, and like the goal was that bright, hopeful future. And the other phrase we used all the time on the team was a future worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
If there's going to be all this fighting, like it kind of has to be worth it for something. Picking the locations in the world was the funnest thing. There's just a group of us who would sit around and like, where do you want to go? Santorini looks amazing. And you're looking at pictures and like, let's make that place. In a video game, people are going to spend hours and hours in a location. Resist the urge to do the common, I call them the cargo container mazes that you see in every game. And I know why they exist. They're easy to make, but we kind of wanted Overwatch to be this world tour of great places that you'd want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the case of like Oasis, it's like, okay, maybe Iraq back when we were making this game wasn't the top of people's list, but what is the bright, hopeful version of what that could look like? So we just really tried to sell this idea of these aspirational locations. One, just to get people thinking about different places on planet Earth and how awesome they all are. But also from like a pure game design standpoint, you're going to spend a lot of time in the environment. So the environment should be pleasing and not oppressive.
Can you go through some of the heroes that you ended up putting in the game? Maybe a good way to do it is which are your favorites? And what's, from the best of your knowledge, of the internet favorites?
My favorite, I have a couple favorite heroes. Obviously Tracer.
She's the OG.
The OG, the cornerstone, we put her on the front of the box. She was that moment of we should just take the best of the best, and we know this gameplay is good and solid, and it's so simple. Like the mechanics are very easy to explain to somebody. It's very easy to pick up. The first time anybody hits recall for the first time and they try to wrap their mind around like, wait, does that mean if and they're mapping out the possibilities.
And by the way, we should say that it's a PvP game with 6 versus 6 at first, and where there's 3 distinct roles that people take on those on a team. And those roles at first, I guess, were not required. Like you can reallocate those roles as you wanted, and then to maximize the fun, you add a little bit of structure. You enforce 2 per role, and the role being tank, support, and damage.
Yeah.
So that, and then there's all the kinds of heroes that are associated with the different roles, and people pick, and there's lore, and some people are probably like hardcore just one particular hero, and so there's a lot of personality and story and community that builds around each of the heroes. But at the end of the day, it is just a fun shooter.
Yeah, our goal was to pay homage to the shooters before us that we loved. There's no way you can talk about Overwatch without talking about Team Fortress 2.
Mm-hmm.
Team Fortress started as a Quake mod, which was brilliant, and I played tons of. Then there was Team Fortress Classic that came out with Half-Life 1. And then Team Fortress 2, I think everything about it blew everybody away when it came out in 2007. And there's obviously just huge influence there. But the shooter mechanics of Overwatch they harken back to what people call the arcade or arena shooter genre, which pains me because back in the day, I didn't think of Quake as a arcade shooter. It's almost an insulting way of saying it, but just the fast movement, really epic over the top weapons. You have a low time to kill, or TTK that players call it, meaning you're very survivable. You can take a few hits, where in a game like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike, if you get shot in the head, you're just dead right away. So it was supposed to be this explosive, larger than life, fun arcadey shooter, with a lot of teamwork involved.
And so you said Tracer up there. She's the OG. Who else?
McCree. McCree is another, I'm somebody who's attracted to the simplicity in design. And I did not design McCree's 6-shooter. The way that gun feels is phenomenal. And to capture the spirit of that, we had a designer named Mike Heiberg designed the High Noon Ultimate. And then just all the care and love the team put in, like when he does the ultimate, we roll a tumbleweed across the screen, like every time. It's a very simple hero, but the simplicity is what I like best in design. I'm not a fan of when somebody starts explaining, in any of these games, whether they're MOBAs or hero shooters, and they start like, this guy throws orbs and he throws 3 orbs and then he runs out of his orb bank and then he can call the orbs back or he can cash the orb. And I'm just, my head is spinning and I'm like, just give me a fucking good gun, and I'm done.
Simplicity is everything.
Yeah.
What about Reinhardt, the tank?
Reinhardt was actually my main. So I played the most of Reinhardt. That was another amazing Jeff Goodman design of this guy who just has a shield. As soon as you give somebody a shield, they know what to do. They go into protector mode. The shield was designed to shoot through. The shield has since been copied by every hero shooter since, and even non-hero shooters. And then he just has a giant rocket hammer, and he does a charge ability. It's really interesting where the charge ability came from. I was playing a ton of Left 4 Dead 2, and you could play in versus mode where you could be the enemy zombie guys, and there was an enemy boss zombie called the Charger who had that charge ability. And I thought the reason that ability was so cool is because it's a commit. Once you press the button, you're a runaway train. And watching Reinhardt's charge to their deaths is kind of hilarious. And it's what separates a great Rein from a shitty one.